Hey, this is Warren Redlick. I'm here with Galiano Tiramani. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, absolutely.
Awesome. Galiano Tiramani from Boxabl, the smart home. What I'm not sure what we're going to call it yet. We're going to tell me in a second. We're going to talk about Boxabl's development, this new approach to housing that looks very interesting, housing and beyond, building something very special. Are you ready? Let's go. So Galiano, tell us, what do we call this? There's folding houses. What is this thing?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, my name's Galiano. I'm one of the founders of Boxabl. Right now I'm sitting in our factory where we're producing houses. And basically we have a new way to build houses that we think is going to make them compatible with factory mass production so that we can crank out huge quantities of housing at the lowest possible cost. And that has really not been possible before. And there's big problems as a result, like, housing affordability and other things like that. So we have a whole bunch of, technology behind the scenes.
I heard the analogy that when we build our houses, when you build a car, it's built in a factory and it's delivered to your house complete. When you build a house, a bunch of guys show up and they build a house on site, and that seems really inefficient. It seems like a lot more sense to build it in a factory and deliver it to the property. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, that's a great example because people are kind of used to the way houses are built, so they don't think it's weird. So if you tell them, hey, imagine buying a car and some guy brought a bunch of sheet metal and hammers and welding torches and started building it in your driveway, that would seem crazy. So, factory built housing does exist, but it's never really caught on. There's been a bunch of problems that stopped it from becoming the main method that we build housing. So with what we've done initially, the initial innovation was to solve this shipping problem, where one of the main reasons most housing is not built in a factory, it's so big, it doesn't fit on the road, so you can't ship it. And the guys that do ship these wide loads, it's very expensive, it's very difficult and cumbersome, so they can't ship it very far. They can never have a big shipping radius from the factory, so then they can never scale up their production. So
what's it cost? Let's say you're in Nevada and you're going to deliver a home to Los Angeles. What would it cost to deliver that home using the traditional method where you have to have like a lead vehicle and a trailing vehicle and an oversized load and getting permits? How much would that add to the cost of delivering the home?
Yeah, so because our houses fold up from 20 feet to 8.5 feet, they just ship highway legal like a standard load. So that might be like $1,000 from Vegas there. But a traditional modular where you have a wide load, it becomes very expensive, maybe up to 5 times more or even more than that cost. And the reason is they have the wide load, it doesn't fit on the highway. So then they require a follow car. So then not only do you have the truck driving the load, but you have another car with flags on the top driving behind it. Sometimes you have that front and back. Some states actually require a police escorts. There's different permitting requirements. There's also different travel time restrictions and travel day restriction. You can't go during rush hour, can't go on the weekends or whatever it is. All different rules in 50 states. So, a total nightmare. And, of course.
So in other words, it might make it $5,000 instead of $1,000, but it sounds like it makes it more difficult operationally to get the delivery done. Does that sound right?
What does
Well, on the one hand, does it sound right that it would add $5,000 to the cost of the home as opposed to $1,000?
Yeah, absolutely. The costs are going to be way more for these traditional modular.
And then operationally, for you to deliver a home to the site, it might be harder for you to schedule everything, and it might make it harder to do it in volume if you have to do all this extra work. So it costs more, and it's more hassle for the company making the home to make these deliveries, because you got to get extra drivers and you got to get extra permits, and all that can slow it down.
Oh yeah, there's all kind of stuff, and we've focused on solving all these different friction points throughout the process. So we've improved other things. For example, a traditional modular unit, when it arrives on site, the contractor has to be there, the crane has to be there to take it off, the pad has to be ready to actually connect it to the foundation and bolt it on. It probably shouldn't be raining that day because then it will suck. And then our units, our drivers are actually able to go to the site, drop it off, by themselves with no one there, no crane, and leave. So they're not even hanging around for more than, half an hour unloading this thing. So, lots of different areas where we've, reduced these issues.
Where are you now? Well, I think I spoke with you once before on this channel. And what I recall at the time was you had maybe 3 prototypes. What I've heard, I don't know if I've seen it from you guys so much. There's some contract related to the military, and you guys have supposedly delivered, what is it, 150 or so Boxables. Can you tell us what was the contract? I'm not asking you what you were paid, because I don't think I need to know that. But what was the contract? If you want to talk about it, you can. But what did you deliver? What were you asked to deliver? What did you deliver? What are they using it for?
Yeah, so when we last spoke, it was quite a while ago. I was just sitting in a small, R&D shop basically. And since then, we've come and set up this big factory. It's 170,000 square feet. We have 200 or so employees. We built the first house, came off the line in October, and now we're producing about 2 to 3 per shift and planning to scale up from here. We did get an initial order from the military, the Department of Defense, to deliver 156 Casita houses for military-based housing. So pretty nice opportunity for us to kind of get started. And we've done it. We're almost finished with that order now. I don't know what number we're on, but we're like right there, maybe a few weeks or a month away from finishing delivery on that. And it was really a great, initial run for us. What we're going to do next is take everything we learned from that and kind of do a next gen of a product and improve the factory, get some more equipment, because what we're doing here is so different than the traditional methods. Almost all the traditional methods are gone. So, this is not a lumber frame house with wood and nails and all that stuff that you've seen if you've ever driven by a job site. We're using totally different materials. So essentially it's all experimental. We're just figuring everything out for the first time and kind of dialing it in, but we're on a really good trajectory right now.
Well, is it a steel frame? What's the nature of the construction?
So it's actually a laminated panel system. So the lots of benefits from that. And I basically went and looked at every possible thing that you could build with, every building material, examined all the different requirements, went through a huge amount of testing for everything under the sun to dial into these building materials and these manufacturing processes. So what we have now is basically 3 layers that are laminated together. So there's the exterior skin, then the core of the wall, which is EPS foam, and then the interior wall. So what we've done is gone from like hundreds or thousands of individual components in a traditional wall where you have tons of little nails, little pieces of wood, and now we just have these bigger pieces, but fewer of them, that are all processed by computer-controlled cutting equipment to precise subcomponents that then assemble together rapidly in our factory. So for example, the front wall on the Casita, that whole wall, we make that in about 20 minutes. And that's just at this early stage of the company. In the future, like in the next few months, once we upgrade some of our equipment, that's going to be even faster, like just like 3 or 4 minutes per wall. And that is, a world away from the traditional method where there's no way you're building a traditional wall using lumber stick framing in 20 minutes.
Well, so I'm trying to understand what gives it the structural strength. With stick built, you've got these pieces of wood. With steel frame, you've got steel. What creates the structural strength in the Boxabl to protect it from wind and storms and things hitting it, birds flying into it? What keeps it from collapsing? Where's the structure?
Yeah, so because it's a laminated composite panel, it's pretty amazing how strong it becomes. I guess a good way to think about it is by laminating these different materials together, you kind of get the best out of each of them. So for example, the wind rating that we've achieved on our walls in all our houses is rated for hurricane speed winds. So, my house here in Vegas could not handle hurricane speed winds in Miami, Florida, but the Boxabl Casita can.
Well, let me pause here a second. So I live in Florida, and there's different strengths of hurricane speed winds. Is it rated for a certain number of miles an hour of wind?
Yeah, I don't know the exact number right now. I believe it's at least 150 miles per hour, but
Okay.
it's like the worst category D wind
Right. That's
rating
Cat 5.
that you can get.
150
Yeah,
miles an hour
okay.
would be
So
Cat 5. That would be the worst. Okay.
yeah. So that's what we've achieved with this, and it's pretty amazing, and it's been the result of a huge amount of trial and error. And it doesn't end there. The building also has a tremendous level of energy efficiency because again, that laminated panel is just superior. So basically, we have uninterrupted foam insulation throughout the whole wall. We have a very tight envelope where air is not escaping through an empty cavity in a wall, and then you also have limited thermal bridging, where in a traditional wall you have pieces of lumber that are conducting energy, heat and cold through them because they're low R value, and you're losing it all. Our walls have very little as far as like thermal bridging goes, so you get like this crazy energy efficiency out of it. It's also clad in all non-combustible material, so helps with the fire rating. The interior wall material is water resistant, so it's not like sheetrock, where if you've ever seen a flood in a sheetrock, the sheetrock turns like mushy, you get mold behind it, you have to replace it all. Ours, if it gets wet, it dries off, and it's good to go. Additionally, the structural strength allows us to stack multi-story, and it's really cool. And we've gone through a bunch of different versions of the product using different materials and kind of improved it as we go, but we're so happy with where we're at now, and it's only going to get better as we continue smart engineering and selecting new building materials. This thing is going to be, I believe, superior to every other building out there, cost less, and be able to be built in 1 month, not 8 months.
Okay. So just to be clear, the Casita is the basic unit that you're currently delivering. What's the dimensions? Is it 20 by 40? How big is it?
Yeah, so we
I
do
mean,
plan
folded
on
out. I
building.
mean, when it's folded out on the site, not when
Yeah,
it's on the
of
truck.
course. Yeah, we do have a building system plan that can build most buildings, a single family, a 1,000-unit apartment building, all the way down to this little casita. But we're just starting out with kind of the smallest room in our system, and that's the 20-foot by 20-foot casita. It has 9.5-foot high ceilings, and yeah, as you said, it actually folds up to 8.5 feet wide for shipping. And then right now, you're able to connect those 20 by 20s together, stack them on top of each other, and eventually we'll have bigger rooms, like maybe 20 by 30, 20 by 40, 20 by 60, with different interior configurations. So maybe one could be a kitchen box, one could be a living room box, maybe in a few different styles. And then you start connecting and arranging those, you end up with like endless possibilities of kind of custom houses you could build.
Okay. But as far as I know, you've only delivered casitas. You haven't delivered anything larger than 20 by 20 yet, right?
Yeah, and we have so much interest in this initial Casita product. The wait list now has over 100,000 names on it. So I think that from the company's perspective, we just want to stick to that for now. Keep it really simple. Get really good at that. I think this factory I'm in now will probably only ever make the 20 by 20 casitas, and then we're planning for our next factory to do the larger building system.
Okay, so you said 100,000 orders. Are there deposits for those? Is it $100? What's the deposit and how is it refundable?
So we do have a list with 100,000 names on it, basically like indications of interest. Those 100,000 names have indicated they want to buy many more than 100,000 homes, because a lot of them don't want one, they want maybe 10. Then about 5,000 of those people have actually paid a deposit. The deposit ranges from, I think the latest structure is going to be a $5,000 deposit, a $200 deposit, or a $5,000 deposit. And then I think soon we're going to enable the full amount to be prepaid. So, huge amount of interest. And then beyond that, we have bigger potential customers like developers. Like, for example, one apartment building here in Vegas could be 1,000 units in it. So just one customer like that can lead to a huge order. We just had DR Horton, which is the biggest home builder in the country, invested us. They placed, a pilot order for 100 houses. So that's just, the pilot order. And, they're making, I think, 100,000 houses per year. So,
where
just
DR Horton builds single family homes mostly. So where's the Casita going to go? Are they going to is that going to be the primary home for people, or is it something that goes in their backyard? How does DR Horton plan to use the Casita?
for now, they're just interested in kind of supporting us because they see us as a potential solution for them in the future. That would make their process easier where they don't have to deal with all these subcontractors and wait so long to build. They can just use our product instead. So they're really looking, they just bought it without necessarily a plan of where to put them. So they're figuring that out now. We're looking at potentially doing a little village of small houses. Maybe they end up with some other lots where they put them. Maybe they do go into backyard as casitas in traditional homes that they built. But I'm hoping we end up with a little village here of small houses in Las Vegas that'll be kind of a showcase community for us.
So, but it seems like 20 by 20 is kind of, I mean, I've lived in that space and I was actually comfortable with it when I lived in Japan. It seems like 400 square feet is kind of small. When you look at that and you say, it's, I think officially the price for a Casita is $50,000, but when you get said and done with putting it on site and doing all the installation and everything, I'm going to guess it's probably more than $100,000.
Yeah, I think, reasonably, depending on the level of site prep and the permitting costs, maybe if you had starting from scratch, you could end up all in like around 100,000. I think that's reasonable. That ends up being, a mortgage on 100,000 is what, it's like $500 or $600 or something. So that's kind of how you can look at it.
I was also thinking, like, if you did that village, your costs per unit might go down because you're spreading a lot. I think your original plan was to deliver them to the backyards of people in California under this accessory dwelling unit plan, and maybe you're still going to do that, but that has its own set of costs because you got to deliver to one specific location, you have to organize everything. If you're doing them all in the same spot, if you build the village you're describing, your cost per unit probably goes down because you can do that to scale in that one place. You would have economies of scale for the village you build. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If you do a little community development and you're building, 100 pads, 100 utilities, that's totally gonna be the lowest cost way to do a little development of these.
So 400 square foot home seems small. What's the advantage to the resident when they're of living in such a small space? What's the positive side of the home? Let me phrase it differently. That seems like it's kind of small. What's the positive side of the home that offsets the fact that it's a little bit small?
Yeah, I think that, this is pretty much the smallest space that you could reasonably live in without really compromising. And when you actually stand in the space, it feels really good because it has high ceilings and everything feels upscale and nice. Like I would have, if I didn't have kids, I would have no problem living in one of these. But we're just kind of starting as a starting point with the lowest cost kind of housing unit we could create. And there's just so much demand for housing in general. We have to increase the overall supply of housing. And, if you're on a budget and you're looking for the lowest cost thing without living somewhere that, is fucked up or old or whatever, then, you're going to probably love living in a casita.
Okay. So moving forward, you've got this factory behind you. What do you expect? I think you said you're doing 2 or 3 per shift and you're hoping to accelerate that. How many shifts are you running right now?
Right now, we're not trying to necessarily go super fast because we want to make sure everything's perfect. Like as we roll this product out, that's a new product. Like I said, everything's new on it. We want to make sure everything's perfect. And then once we feel like we have a really good handle and everything's where we want to be, then we'll start ramping up as much as we can in this building, in this factory. Meanwhile, we are making plans for a much larger factory. So we're basically making the case for and planning for what I want to be a $1 billion factory. My goal is to produce 1 house per minute because the automobile makers can do that, no problem. Our product is compatible with that type of manufacturing. Our product is simpler than those cars, I believe. They're putting out, 1 car per minute at Ford and 1 car per minute at Tesla. If we can put out one room per minute in our factory, it's just going to be such a big deal. Everyone's going to look at that and say, oh shit, this has the potential to dominate if they can bring the cost down to the point. And I'm also very confident that we're going to bring the cost down and the quality up, because we just have all these principles that you don't see with a traditional builder. So a guy who's out, in the 110 degrees in Vegas, or the rain, with a hammer and nails banging together little pieces of wood, he's never going to have the principles we do, which are, the standardization, the repeatability in the manufacturing, the potential for automation, the ability to use unskilled labor, the bulk purchasing power, just, all the efficiencies that that makes mass production assembly line work. And we know mass production assembly line works because that's how everything's built. Everything, a sneaker, a television, a car, but housing isn't. So we can make housing work on an assembly line. We're going to take a huge leap forward in cost.
So I'm just trying to get a feel for this. You said you're doing 2 or 3 a shift. Are you running one shift now? Are you not running that much? Are you not doing a full shift yet? Where are you on that?
Oh, so yeah. So right now we're just doing just one shift.
Okay. So
Yeah.
does that mean you're producing 2 or 3 a day?
Yes.
Okay. And then looking forward, I guess you could conceivably go to 2 shifts or even 3 shifts and even weekends, and you could produce more. And that, oh, sorry, I know without a question. A lot of companies, at least in the auto industry, and I think other parts of the economy, are dealing with supply chain issues, that they're having difficulty getting chips, they're having difficulty getting batteries, they're having difficulty getting parts. I don't think your units necessarily rely on electric motors or chips or batteries. So is the supply chain issue that we're hearing from others, is that affecting you guys in building the units you're building? Is it, and if you decided to scale up, would it be a problem then?
Oh yeah. Supply chain is a big issue everywhere, I think. And certainly it's affected us. It's been a big learning curve, starting a hardware manufacturing startup right in the middle of historical supply chain issues and inflation. So we basically find it hard to get everything. We have price increases on everything of at least 20%, often much more than that. However, we've overcome them all and we figured it all out. But it's not ideal. It kind of sucks right now. And I think that for us to scale, supply is a very big part of that that picture, because the scale that I want to get to, could I even buy enough windows, for example, from a window manufacturer to hit that scale that I need. So that's a part of the planning, is for us to say, where can we get all this stuff for this bigger factory that we're planning? One solution we have to that is some of our components will be like vertically integrating and manufacturing ourselves. So we're selecting certain things that are important, that save the most cost, that are the hardest to get, that result in poor quality, and we're planning to bring those in-house for this next factory.
So is an example of, you mentioned windows, is that an example of one of the more difficult parts in the supply chain? What about doors? What are some other parts that you're noticing issues with in the supply chain?
That's actually one that hasn't been a problem. I just said it because it was an easy one to pick. But one, for example, EPS foam, which is what we use for the insulation materials. Pretty much every plant in the country has their customers on allocation and is not taking new customers. So that's one that's been a problem. Anything that comes from China is slowed way down. We have shipping container costs that used to be $3,000 a container. Now it's $20,000 a container. If something comes into the port, it's so backed up now that it can sit at the port for a month before it even gets offloaded. So there's a whole bunch of stuff. We're looking all around the entire planet for everything we need. But we're in a good position. We're stocking up so that we always have a lot of inventory, so that if there's a disruption in supply chain, we have enough to cover whatever time it takes for that disruption to get worked out. And overall, we're lucky because we just have this one product, so there's nothing too crazy or complicated going on. We're just producing the same thing over and over, and we're able to build as much as we need. We're not building it to order. We're just building it and instantly it goes out.
What's an example of something that you might vertically integrate and bring in instead of getting from outside?
So one thing that I just mentioned is that EPS foam. That's something we're definitely going to do. One of the reasons for that is the EPS foam, it's actually about 98% air. So we could either, blow the block of foam in Texas and ship it here, or we can just ship the raw beads here and blow it ourselves. So that's a nice one because of the shipping. Then we also have plastic extrusions, PVC extrusions. That's another one where it's kind of a long supply chain on that. So if we can make it ourselves, it'll shorten the time on that one. I think probably the material we use for the wallboard, that's a really important one. We'll probably produce that ourselves. We already started producing the showers ourselves, because that was an easy one where we saw, instead of buying this from, like Home Depot, for example, we will design and engineer our own shower. So that's one thing we've taken in and redesigned.
Okay, I got to ask you one of my wacky ideas, because I have an idea for a startup that I'm probably never going to get to. And my idea is for basically off-grid housing. And plumbing can be an issue, especially disposing of what's called black water, what goes to the toilet.
Yeah.
And one of my ideas is to use incinerator toilets instead of regular toilets. And then the process of plumbing for this idea would be like an apartment complex. It can apply to your village. The hassles of developing like an entire sewage system for your neighborhood could be a lot easier if you just use incinerator toilets. I'm guessing that's not something that's come on your radar yet.
Well, the off-grid stuff is really appealing because doing the site development sucks. So like if you have a lot that doesn't have power to it and you have to start trenching in power or bringing power lines overhead, that's a huge cost. If you have to connect to sewer or even build a whole septic field for sewage, that's a huge cost, and it slows everything down like crazy. If we could just have a unit that was deployable, that had everything you need and it didn't need anything else,
Right.
that'd be pretty cool, because those utilities are always going to be an issue.
Yeah, because an incinerator toilet uses about 1 or 2 kilowatt hours of burn, and you probably do it twice a day. So, if you're producing solar, it's not that much. If you're producing a decent amount of solar, are you using solar roofs?
So our idea right now is that we're just producing these rooms and we'll sell them to builders and developers who will then do everything else they need to do, and it will make their lives easier. But certainly our units can easily plug into solar, or plug into the grid, or whatever you need to do. I suspect that in the future, we will design something that comes ready to go with the solar. We're not ready for that just yet, but it's totally, in the pipeline.
Have you thought about the surface area? If you have 400 square feet in the unit, you probably have 400 square feet of roof. It's a flat roof, right?
Yes, the stock unit is just a flat roof.
So, how much solar could you get on that roof?
Actually, I did do all the calculations on that, quoted out solar and stuff like that. And our units are pretty energy efficient. So I think that you basically with our roof, maybe if you built a little overhang, like a little overhang type of thing, maybe around like 600 square feet total. I think that would take care of it. Just solar on the roof only.
Okay. So I got this odd question that popped in my head. I had this general sense that the typical car has about 10,000 parts. Do you have a sense of how many parts there are in a Casita, or is it like almost impossible to ponder that?
We know the number, and it's funny because someone just said it yesterday, but I don't remember what it was. It's not 10,000. It's significantly less than that. I think probably around 1,000. That's something that we really focus on, is reducing those parts and simplifying things, because of course that makes it easier and faster and cheaper to manufacture. So we've already done that. If you look at our product compared to traditional construction, way less little parts and pieces in there. But no, I don't know the exact number.
Okay, so we talked beforehand, and for people watching, there's a disclosure in the description below You're about to do some kind of funding round, or in the middle of some kind of, maybe you're in the middle of more than one funding round. What is your funding situation right now? How would you describe it?
Well, it's really cool, and I've never raised money for any projects I've done in the past. This is my first time doing that, and we chose the route of what's basically crowdfunding, where early on the bulk of the money we raised was from accredited investors, so high net worth people, but it was directly through the website in kind of a crowdfunding format where people would come across us online and invest. So that's worked really well for us. It's allowed myself and the other owner of the company to remain in complete control of everything we're doing and kind of call all the shots. To date, closed on about $90 million with that method. So, I think we've kind of hit it out of the park on that, because it's quite, unusual and really amazing. You can just kind of go to our website, click invest, and the minimum investment right now is $1,000. We just were able a month ago to get the qualification from the SEC for a Reg A+, which allows us to accept money from anyone, regardless of their net worth.
Well, you had done a crowdfunding round before that was $5 million. I thought that was not merely, I thought that was anyone, not just accredited investors. Do I have that wrong?
Yeah, so originally we started out with what's called Reg CF, which now you can do up to 5 million from anyone. But next to that, we had raised, like, I think before this past offering, we had about 50 million from accredited investors, and then we were able to do that 5 million from the not accredited. And now we've got, we're now allowed to do up to 75 million from not accredited, and which we're in the past month, we're, I think, about maybe close to halfway through that one.
Okay, and something I saw on your website, this would, the latest funding round would value your company at $3 billion, right?
Yeah.
So to justify a valuation of $3 billion, where do you see revenue and profit? Where do you see yourself becoming profitable? What year? And what's your projection? At what point do you start seeing significant revenue and significant profits for this company? Because to justify a $3 billion valuation, you got to have significant revenue and significant profits. And presumably you're hoping the valuation goes up, but where do you see, let's say 5 years from now, where do you see revenue and profit per year? Or if you, you don't have to pick 5 years if you want. If you have a year you want to pick, go ahead.
Yeah. So that 3 billion valuation is based around a raise $1 billion for our next factory, which would be the largest, most advanced housing factory ever done, and it would produce multiple billions in revenue. And the cool thing is, even if we get that kind of monster factory, I call it, it's still nothing in comparison to the demand. So this is such a big market, building construction all over the world, and we have something that we think is such a game changer, so disruptive, and so different that we believe once we prove this system out, that we're going to be able to take a big share of building construction all around the world. So this first factory, I kind of think of it as a prototype factory to prove everything out, and we would
it's the machine that builds the machine.
Yeah, and we're learning so much now every day, and this building alone, once it's up to full speed, hopefully within a year, I think we can do about like $250 million in revenue in just this building. We do also have plans to continue growing slowly into other warehouses, so that would be separate from our plan to jump to a monster factory. We would also do some slower growth as needed, just because there's a lot of warehouses available in the area here.
Okay, just to pause here a second. $250 million in revenue, does that translate to 50,000 units or 500,000 units? What's the number there? Because you got 50. If you got 50,000 a unit, then presumably I can't do the math in my head. $250 million divided by 50,000. I think that works out to 50,000 units, but no, maybe it's 5. Is that 500,000?
Yeah. So basically, this building, we planned it to be able to do about 6 casitas per shift. So maybe we do 2 shifts and we get 12 per day. You know, it puts us in the maybe like the 3 to 5,000 range. And then also we're going to mix in other products that are
Yeah, it'd be 5,000
higher.
5,000 units. If you did 5,000 units at $50,000 a piece, that would be $250 million. Right. So that's a
Yes.
ballpark number. Okay. So so what do you anticipate the gross margin per unit? You know, like a lot of my viewers are Tesla fans, right? And the gross margin on a Tesla vehicle right now is around 30%. Where do you see gross margin? Let's say when you get to 50,000 units a year coming out of this factory that you're in now, what do you see gross margin as at that point?
Yeah, so in this factory at this stage, before we get to something much bigger with much more automation and all that, we're targeting about a $30,000 raw material cost and probably about 5,000 in direct labor. And then probably also going to bump, like right now the retail price it's supposed to be 50,000. We're probably going to bump that up a little just because, you know, inflation's so crazy and prices keep going up. So I think we'll have, you know, pretty healthy margins once everything's figured out here. And then the next level should get even better than that. You know, once we actually get some real automation, some real robotics, some real scale in here, a bigger, just a longer assembly line, I think it's going to go way down. And then also that's just for this little Casita. We could also do different models, maybe a more upscale model with higher margins. We can also do different products. So this is a 20 by 20 Casita. We do a 20 by 30, a 20 by 40, a 20 by 60 room with maybe one is just a bathroom only, one is just a kitchen only, one is a living room only. And those will have different unit economics as well. But what I'm looking at right now is that our product would be, you know, the lowest cost solution to build ever. And I believe that we'll get to a point where we're very competitive. For example, that we could supply housing to one of the big national builders. For example, D.R. Horton, who's one of our investors. You know, their cost to build. I believe that our product will be lower than their cost to build. So therefore, we could supply them, you know, kind of in bulk. And I think that it's a no-brainer that if you can make factory mass production work with housing, the costs are going to come way down.
All right, but so I'm looking at, let's say that 250 million in revenue, and if you've got, let's say 20% gross margin, that means $50 million in profit. At 100 price earnings ratio, I think that works out to a $5 billion. Well, that's gross profit, not net profit. But I think that does start to approach a multi-billion-dollar valuation or $1 billion plus valuation.
Yeah, and you know, with the valuation thing, like if people are investing in Boxabl, they're basically making a bet that we have something that's going to change the whole world, that's going to be massively impactful, that's going to scale to become an absolute monster. You know, this is not a bet that we'll have a small, you know, 170,000 factory producing houses every year. This is like a moonshot world domination bet that you know these people are making, and that this is what I believe is going to happen. And anything else, anything less, I would consider basically, you know, a failure, because I think that essentially we can provide a building product that's going to allow people to build for less than anyone else can do. And if that's the case, that's going to sell. Like everything we make is going to sell. It's almost like a commodity, you know, like building supplies. So like, let's say I had gold bricks, and I was selling them at less than market rate for gold. They would sell instantly. So that's kind of the same situation we have here, where there's so much demand for housing. There's not enough. It's all so expensive. And that's why we have this huge wait list of interested customers, because the market's just insane. And someone needs to come up with a solution. And hopefully we do it. And hopefully we get into this you know, $1 billion factory next. And then hopefully we can scale around the world after that.
Would the $1 billion factory be in Nevada? Or is that location not determined yet?
Well, I would like to stay in Nevada, and they did give us certain incentives for this first factory. So I think we'll get more for another factory. I think it makes sense strategically. I think we want to be near California, where housing costs are very high. But we're not opposed to looking at other places. If we can get an amazing deal from another jurisdiction, we will move it. So we'll kind of see what happens.
Are there certain critical parts that you mentioned Texas at one point for maybe your foam? If you're going to make it in-house, it's not going to be an issue, but is there an advantage in locating close to a supplier, or is it really more important to be close to the consumer? I'm guessing the consumer might be more important.
Yeah, I think, it's going to be a balancing act eventually of how big do the factories need to be to get all the efficiencies while still being able to ship to customers without being too far. Because although we do have the lowest cost shipping solution for a factory built housing, it still costs money. So we still don't want to ship, to New York from Nevada if we don't have to. So ideally we end up with a few factories, maybe 4 around the country that are very, very large, but not too big where we just have one factory that's shipping everywhere.
Okay. And I wanted to go back to, you delivered some Casitas to the military. I think that there was actually an intermediate customer, right? The Department of Defense wasn't the direct customer. There was some other customer in the middle that intermediated.
Yeah. So the way that worked was the actual military base where they ended up reached out directly to me. And then once they decided they want to place the order, because we aren't part of the government purchasing system, they have to then bid it out through these middlemen, which are called prime vendors or prime contractors or something like that. So that middleman, which is ADS Inc., which sells everything to the government, they sell guns and bullets and all kind of stuff. They basically got inserted, as kind of as a middleman on the deal.
So have you been to the base and seen the actual units up and occupied?
Oh, I haven't. They wouldn't clear me to go into the base.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. But one of our employees did actually go there and supervise the beginning of the installs and stuff. And I think he'll be back there again in a few weeks. I believe they've set up like 20 or 40 out of 150 so far.
Is anyone living in them yet?
Don't think so.
Okay. And as far as I mean, I heard, I don't know if you're aware of this. I've heard from multiple people telling me how great everything's going. They're all investors in the company, and I don't know, some of them have sources, from the military or something like that. And what they're telling me is they're getting great positive feedback. Do you have any direct feedback from either the military or the supplier of the intermediary telling you what the response is so far?
So it's funny. So far, just the installers were very happy with it, because obviously they're building contractors. They're used to building from scratch. That's much more difficult than what we have. So they love this product. They're like, it's so easy. But one thing that happened was basically, I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but I'll say it anyway. Somebody from that government contractor ended up actually ordering units, and now somebody else from the install crew is actually ordering units. So I think that's like the best feedback we could get, is these guys didn't have to say anything good about it because they just wanted one. So they've actually bought one themselves. So
fair enough.
So that was cool.
Are you making a profit on this particular contract? Or is this sort of like a, learn from experience, not lose too much money on it so we get more experience doing this?
Yeah, I mean, so this has been like all R&D, learning, get experience, not worried about making money or losing money on this. Obviously don't want to lose an obscene amount of money, and we won't. But it's just kind of a means to an end to be able to dial everything in once we kind of get this running start at this first order.
Okay, so you mentioned before that you see yourselves going to, like, this is the current generation and you're constantly innovating. Do you have a sense of like what the next generation Casita is going to be like? What's going to be different about it? What are some of the big changes coming in terms of your manufacturing process and or what the consumer is going to see on their end?
Yeah, we have it all mapped out for the next gen of the product and the updates to the manufacturing equipment and the manufacturing facility. So there's some things that are going to happen, in the next, 3 months, some things that'll happen in the next 9 months, just depending on what makes sense. But some really big changes coming to the product. Not something that anyone would necessarily notice if they were an end user. It's just stuff that we notice because we're actually building it from all the pieces. But one cool thing that we're doing next is behind me out there. I don't know if you can really see it. There's the lamination line where all the pieces of the wall get put together and then it gets laminated together so that it's rock solid. We're actually going to be upgrading that as a next step and adding in some automation there, so that basically instead of guys putting together the pieces and building one wall every 20 minutes, it's going to be all done with I think it's like overhead gantry suction, and that will put out one every like 3 to 5 minutes with no people in it. So that's pretty cool as far as a step forward in the manufacturing equipment. And then, a bunch of technical stuff in the actual product, in the building materials used. We've been able to do some kind of smart engineering to reduce the cost of the product. So, really excited roadmap of product updates coming.
Okay. I wanted to go back to the wind rating. So when I was looking at building a cabin, which I ended up not doing, there's like different kinds of roof setups, and you have like a flat roof, and my there's sort of what's called, I think it's a gable roof, which is like, just
Yep.
two slopes. And then there's something called a hip roof where it's sort of like a pyramid shape. And supposedly the hip roof is the most safe from a wind perspective. Was there any issues with having a flat roof and that being a challenge for wind, or not really an issue at all?
Well, the flat roof is what the product comes with, but it's not necessarily how it will be set up in the end. People may add, obviously you need to add a foundation in most cases, utilities, a driveway, bushes, trees, whatever. And in a lot of cases, they're going to add a roof as well when they want either a certain architectural style, or maybe they live in a snow area where they're required to have a certain pitch for snow load. So that's a whole kind of separate topic where the builder would just add whatever's appropriate for that area. But what we have on our units is kind of two things when it comes to wind. One is the rating, the load the wall can handle. So it's a transverse load test where basically, you take the panel and you put down pressure in the middle of it, and you measure how much pressure is pushing on it, and then you measure how much it bends. So in order to get that wind rating, it can only bend a certain amount under a certain weight, and then you get the wind rating. The other thing is actually keeping the roof on. So how the fasteners fasten the roof to the walls, and there's a rating on that based on the fasteners used. So between those two things, we achieve, whatever wind rating we achieve. And then if they want to add another roof on site, they just have to do the appropriate engineering. And we're eventually going to provide plans for all that, like added services for all that, whether it's like a roof plans or foundation plans or help with permitting. Eventually we'll roll all that into the process.
So are they typically installed on a concrete pad? And my impression is that concrete is not CO2 friendly. Are there any options of ways that you could put it on something that isn't concrete, or is it just, concrete's so easy, it's so common that's what we got to do?
Yeah. I think concrete is like one of the top materials consumed on the planet, aside from like water. Side note. But yeah, so our units are compatible with basically any foundation type or no foundation type. The floor on them is very strong. It's as strong as the roof. And that means that you, at a minimum, could just support it with like piers, like one on each 4 corners, piers, and you're good to go. Or you can put it in a concrete slab or a stem wall or something else. The government actually just put it down on gravel. So I think what they did was they put out like utilities, and then they dump gravel like water lines and power lines, and then they dump gravel over the top of that, and then they just put the house, the casitas, on top of the gravel, which is interesting. I hadn't thought of doing it that way.
Well,
before.
how much does a casita weigh?
It's about 14,000 pounds.
Is there any risk it would like blow away in a strong wind? if it's not
Well,
bolted down?
well, yeah, yeah. So that's part of it. That's part of the wind consideration too. Is it actually has to be bolted to the ground, or it'll move. It
Right.
won't
So,
blow away, but it maybe move a few inches.
but I mean, if they put it on gravel, it might not stay put.
Yeah, and I think there's more to it for that use case where they may have fastened it down to something like with anchors or something like that. But you know, even if these things do move, I think they're going to be fine. It's not like a traditional house is built on a foundation. So if you push the walls, it would all fall apart. Our house would just move and it would just kind of stay together.
I think you got to put this thing in a wind tunnel and see what happens.
Oh yeah, we're doing all that. So right now we're actually doing all this third party. We've done all our in-house testing, and then we're doing third party testing, which is done by one of these big third party testing companies. And we're going to do all kind of crazy stuff like the full like wind tunnel and earthquake and.
Well,
and,
it's like a
that'll be
shake
great for
table.
marketing.
Isn't there something called a shake table that you put it on to test
Yeah.
for earthquake?
Yeah, I've seen that. There's videos online where they actually put the entire they build an entire building on top of these crazy tables. To get the earthquake rating, you don't actually need that. You just test one wall panel, and then they just like kind of wiggle it like that. But if you want to go crazy, which we will do really for the marketing, is do like the full wind tunnel or the full shake table kind of thing.
Okay. All right. I can't think of anything else to ask you. I'm impressed with your enthusiasm. I'm impressed with the vision. Is there anything else I haven't asked you about that you want to talk about?
I think we've covered a lot of it. Things are really exciting for us, and they're moving really quickly. And if anyone's interested to learn more, they can check out the website boxabl.com. Check out our social media. We kind of posting nonstop updates like almost daily on social media, so you can get a really good idea of what's going on here. And we also welcome visitors. If you want to come by anytime for a tour, we're happy to have anyone here.
How far are you from the Strip?
About 20 minutes from the Strip and the airport.
Okay. Oh, are you
So come to Vegas.
are you following? I thought about something. Have you been in the Boring Company tunnel at the Las Vegas Convention Center yet?
No, I haven't, but I'm definitely going to soon.
And they have a plan for a 29-mile tunnel system in Las Vegas. Are you anywhere near where the tunnel would go?
I have no clue, but I doubt it because we're kind of on the outskirts of town right now.
Well, what direction are you from, say, the airport or the Strip? Are you east, north, west, south?
So that's all right, kind of in the middle, and we are northeast corner.
Okay. All right. I mean, I think it's going to go north, but I don't think it's going to go northeast. So.
Yeah. I just got the Model X Plaid, and I love it.
Awesome. I have one on order, and I just got notified. I was on like some kind of hold, and I just got notified the hold was lifted. So I may be getting my Model X Plaid soon. Oh,
you got the same one?
I got a red Model X Plaid. I ordered a red Model X Plaid with a white interior. They all come with 6 seats, and I wanted 5 seats, but they forced me to take a 6-seater, and FSD, of course. And I'm gonna get a towing hitch on it probably.
Oh yeah, I got the towing hitch on mine. I love it. I mean, everything about it is just so convenient, and it's like I don't even want to look at any other car now. My favorite thing is just the self-driving because it's so stress-free. You get on the highway and you're just hanging out. I mean, it feels great. Your mind can go other places.
Yeah. But on the other hand, it's probably fun to drive it yourself.
Well, yeah, if you want to go, 0 to 60 in 2 seconds, that's fun as well.
Have you taken it to a track yet?
No, just back and forth from work for me.
Okay. All right. Well, listen, thank you very much for coming on. Well, I hope to talk to you again sometime soon. Congratulations on all you've accomplished so far, and I look forward to seeing you do more in the future.
Thank you so much for having me on your show, and have a good day.
Hey, thanks everybody for watching. Please check out my other videos. Please support the channel on Patreon. Check the links below for information about Boxabl. Check out elonbits.com for the t-shirts. Insanely Gigantic is the opposite of what Boxabl delivers, but it's what their factory will be and what their stock price will be hopefully in the future. But read the disclosure first. Thank you so much for watching.